fighting that virus. But I want to make this perfectly clear to even anyone that might be witnessing the proceedings today that the NDP and I agree that road safety is vital to all Nova Scotians. And in no way would I want to do anything or to say anything that would put either pedestrians or the motoring public at any sort of risk. And there are some things, and I think some concerns that have risen. And one of the things that I've heard, particularly from mechanics that have been in contact with my constituency office, is they feel very adamant about this, and that was the lack of consultation. It seems to me that, according to the reports that I hear from them, that the consultation was followed after the decision was made with respect to the cost, the $25 increase in the fee for the MVI. And my question would be is why wasn't there consultation? And the $25 fee, I hear complaints from from mechanics that it doesn't cover the cost of the inspection itself now, with them having to remove the tires and inspect the brakes. So as a result of that, I think even some motorists or vehicle owners that are taking their cars in for inspection maybe, or at least the potential risk now exists for them to being held hostage so that the mechanic can make up for some of that lost revenue.
The Honourable, the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Chair, and the Honourable Member raises another of the important initiatives that the Department is administering now. And I just want to go a little bit history. And when he began his comments, the Honourable Member from Bedford Fall River, Waverley, began his comments, he talked about safety. And indeed, that's what this is all about, is road safety. And I think you can put the new motor vehicle inspection regulations maybe in the same category, along with my colleague from Transportation and Public Works, of the Ignition Interlock program, the improvements to the graduated driver's license program, the call for cars to be kept better, motor vehicles to be kept in better mechanical shape, and also for the drivers to be better regulated. So what this new regulation was intended to do, and I've been told by those in the industry that will improve road safety. I have talked to a number of people who are involved in the motor vehicle business, and I'm not talking necessarily about the debate about how frequently new cars should be inspected or new cars should be inspected, but you know, they simply say to me, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. We have a lot of vehicles on this road, that, you know, they just should be examined. You know, they need that annual check to see that they are roadworthy and they are safe. Now, there were some stats, I can't give them to you right now, about the number of older vehicles that when they were stopped by departmental inspectors and checked, it was kind of scary, the number of those, the percentage of them that, despite the fact that they would have gone through and would have passed the old MVI inspection, probably were not really, shouldn't have been on the road without some modifications to them, some safety things. So anyway, the fee and the changes were done in consultation with industry, the associations that represent the people who do that work. To be quite frank, in terms of price, the person who goes in to get the car inspected now will tell you it's too much. You go to the garage where I take a car periodically, they got a sign up on the wall saying it's not enough. You know, so I guess if we have those who are paying for it saying it's not right, in some ways those who are providing the services saying not right, then somewhere in there is a reasonable happy medium. And of course those prices, Mr. Chair, had not been adjusted for, I think, about 15 years. So the old fee structure was not good. Now, you know, we get the criticism say, well, you have to take the drums off. And it takes you a long time to take the drums off. Well, Mr. Speaker, if the car is in good working order, I'm told by people who perform that, then take the drums off is not a big thing. And if the drums have not been taken off and the brakes are seized, which is normally things that we hear, is that if you take them off once, get them fixed or whatever you have to do, the next year you don't have that, you know, to perform the maintenance on an annual basis or the inspection annual basis becomes easier because the things won't be seized. The other thing, you know, the regulations do provide, if there is going to be an extraordinary amount of work to inspect a car, then the person doing the inspection, licensed inspection agency, can inform the consumer in advance of doing the inspection, and the fee could be adjusted.
Honourable member for Waverley, Fall River Beaverbank.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess for the record, I just will remind the minister it's Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank. No.
If you want to
No. You just handed it over. Yeah. Vehicles. I guess I would be interested, and I heard the minister say that he didn't have any statistics, and I guess I, as one, would be interested in some point in time seeing some statistics that certainly prompted this initiative to begin with. There's a word in there that I've heard over the last couple minutes, and it's called roadworthy. And since we're talking about safety, and I know that a vehicle that's deemed as not being roadworthy will be banned from the highways, from the roads, and they don't get a rejection sticker. They're just said, that's it. You can't drive your vehicle. It hasn't passed the inspection. And I guess what I'm looking for a definition of what is roadworthy. And I want to continue on that train of thought because I guess what I'm also looking for is some consistency. So if I was a mechanic, who defines roadworthy? Has it been defined by the province of Nova Scotia? And if it's been defined by the province of Nova Scotia, what is the criteria? Or is it left up into the individual hands of the mechanic, which again, does that not, is there a standard? Would each mechanic have their own, in their own estimation, what they would consider as what's roadworthy and what's not roadworthy? So if I go into a mechanic for an MVI, and if I got a cracked windshield and maybe a broken tail light, is that considered as a roadworthy vehicle or a non-roadworthy vehicle? So I think I'm looking for a definition of exactly what roadworthy is, or isn't.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in answer to the member's question, there is an inspection manual which every inspection station would have, and presumably every person who performs an inspection would be familiar with, which does specify in great detail what elements are to be perused or examined during the inspection process. And I guess I would say that if all those criteria are met, then the vehicle is determined to be roadworthy. Now, on the other hand, I know what the honourable member was talking about, that if you've got a burnt-out tail light, or as in my case the other day, I had to get a driving light replaced, the daylight driving light replaced. Certainly the car was clearly roadworthy, but I do know if I'd taken it in for inspection, it would not have passed. And I know that also under the Motor Vehicle Code, if one of the people who do enforce motor vehicle regulations chose to stop me, then I guess I could have been, what was the word you used? Charged, yes, thank you, yes.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank is charged.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my interpretation of that is that through the manual, then it's considered that there would be some consistency throughout the province of Nova Scotia. Is that okay? Now, is there any way, or are there any checks in place? Are there any checks and balances in place to ensure the motoring public and pedestrian traffic as well, that everybody is being held to that standard?
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, the department does have inspectors who do visit the inspection stations, and also on occasion, on a spot check basis, they will re-examine vehicles that have been inspected to see that they have been inspected properly.
The Honourable Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, you mentioned earlier in one of your answers or one of your responses that motors were complaining because the price was too high, and you had mechanics complaining that because the price was too low. And I hear that. And so isn't there a risk that if the price is considered too low for the mechanic, isn't there potentially a risk for the vehicle owner when he or she brings that vehicle in for the inspection, that the mechanic or the service station has to make up for this lost revenue someplace? So isn't it a real danger that the consuming public, the consumer, can be dinged for other things other than what actually is?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, I guess anything is possible, but you know, my experience in dealing with the businesses here in Nova Scotia, and I guess I do most of my business in Nova Scotia, is because I find the people with whom I deal to be good, solid, honest individuals, and you know, they're in business to make a dollar, there's no question about that. But I give you an example of something, a gentleman who's no longer in business, but it was a car thing, and it happened to me a number of years ago. I had taken a car into a service station. It was one of these cars which probably should never have come out of wherever it came from. It was nothing but trouble from the time it left the lot, and it was probably trouble on the lot, but they didn't say that when it was sold. Anyway, it wasn't my car, it was somebody else's. I took it to the service station, place where I always took mine, and there were two things that had to be fixed. And anyway, before it could pass an inspection, and he fixed one. When I went to pick the car up, he said, well, look, you know, that should be under warranty. You take it back to the dealer and get it fixed for free. You know, and I think most of the businesses in Nova Scotia operate on that basis. So there was a risk when the fee for inspection was, how much was it? Whatever it was before, the same thing. The people that were doing the inspection for the most part would tell you that probably that was not enough to cover that fee for that inspection either. So I don't think anything has changed. I think the people that provide these services are, reputable businesses. I mean, we're going to have some fly-by-nighters, and it doesn't make any difference in what field it is, whether it's repairing cars or selling clothes or whatever it is. And but by and large, as a consumer, I think most of us will deal with businesses whom we can trust and that have established, because of their good service, a reputation.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, sorry. I just want to continue this for just another minute or so with respect to MVIs. Under the old system, if I got a rejection sticker, I think it was I had 10 days to rectify or to fix whatever it was. Then I could go back and reapply for an MVI. And I think what I see, certainly we're in the riding that I represent, I see a lot of individuals that like to work on their own vehicles. So if I am one, and I'm certainly not, probably a good thing that I'm not, but if I was a backyard mechanic and I go to a service station for an MVI and my car does not pass, it's, for whatever the reason is, and we're almost getting back to that roadworthy thing, am I allowed to drive my vehicle home to my backyard garage and fix whatever the problem is?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Now, the way that works, Mr. Chair, and it's a good question, if the car is not deemed to be roadworthy, in other words, was dangerous, the person who did the inspection would not pass it because the car was not safe to be on the road, then you would not be allowed to drive the vehicle from the inspection sticker. If you wanted to fix it in your backyard, then you would have to get a tow truck or somebody to tow that vehicle out of that service station and take it and get it fixed. On the other hand, if it is a minor repair which does not affect basically the road safety, and I'm talking about, major thing that you can drive down the highway and stop the car and, all of those things, then you would get a rejection sticker, and you would have a certain period of time, and if you could fix it yourself, because you have to take it back and get it re-inspected, if you could get it, fix it yourself, then yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
Honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see with MVIs, I mean, certainly it's my interpretation that motor vehicle inspections are not a money grab by the government. I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think government only gets something like $3 in inspection. Okay. Yeah. So I don't see that as a huge revenue generator. Having said that, and again, and I don't know if it's just me or not, but I just want to reiterate that I do get a lot of calls from not only residents, but from mechanics that are complaining on both ends. One complaining that it's not enough, and someone complaining about it's too much. And I think when we talk about increases, and I do recognize the fact that it's been a number of years since there's been an increase with MVIs, but I think we can't lose sight of the many. Unfortunately, the large number of Nova Scotians that any increase in anything can be in a significant amount of money. And whether it be $5 or $8, it sometimes can mean the difference between whether you do something or whether you don't. And when it comes to a motor vehicle, especially if depending on my wealth, that vehicle that I own, I'm going to take a real risk and say the vehicle that I own, the more disadvantaged I am when it comes to financial income, I would say the more at risk I am, or I place myself when it comes to having a vehicle that's going to pass traditionally motor vehicle inspections. I think that's, it somewhat makes a common sense equation for me. So I guess my question is to the minister is that over the next little while, do you plan on doing some tinkering with these regulations, or are these going to be enacted as they is forever and a day?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if the honourable member could repeat the last part of that question. I was trying to get a little bit of information on the first part, and I missed the last part.
The Honourable Member.
You're asking me to replay that tape now. I'll try to. My question is that, and we're talking about increases in fees, and what I was talking about is the tinkering. Is there going to be any more tinkering with the regulations as they stand now? And what led up to that was the fact that there are many Nova Scotians that are what I would call financially disadvantaged when it comes to the money coming into the household, which places many more Nova Scotians at risk when it comes to the motor vehicle inspection. So, does that do it?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, you know, I know that the motor vehicle inspection regulations are reviewed regularly, not only under the leadership of my department, but in consultation with those who actually work in the business. There is a price to owning a motor vehicle, and I guess I understand full well what the honourable member is saying, is that those people have greater financial means. Normally, they probably change vehicles more frequently. Secondly, you know, they would change vehicles more frequently. If something was worn out or beginning to wear down, and somebody said, well, you know, you've only got, you know, another 5,000 kilometers on those brake pads or whatever it would be, they probably would tend to change it rather than going back in a second time. But, you know, the only real difference, I guess, is that if we're talking about road safety, the difference is in the price of getting that inspection sticker. I mean, clearly, if a person was driving a vehicle that was not roadworthy, we would not want it on the road, regardless of the level of the income of the person who owned it or who was driving it.
Honourable Member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Still, I think continuing with, I guess, with this train of thought, but I guess maybe staying with motor vehicles, but going somewhere else, no pun intended. The problems of Nova Scotia, through your department, Mr. Minister, they literally, I think there are just hundreds of user fees. I don't know how many there are, but there's just got to be user fees all over the place. And there's got to be, would it be fair to say that there's 500 or, you know, user fees in the province of Nova Scotia? I see a staff member kind of shaking their head, but I'm wondering, and I guess I guess there might be a part A and a part B to this question, is that my question is, are user fees reviewed on a regular basis? I know that there's been an increase. I think the increase this year is tied to the Consumer Price Index, if I think so. And so my question is, when you do that, I mean, does somebody on staff sit down and review user fees on a regular, consistent basis? And does anybody make the assessment about what's fair and what's not fair? We have many user fees, and I think one would, and we could take motor vehicles into consideration, because I often wondered, as a person that drives a motor vehicle, I only drive a four-cylinder vehicle, which I think is I'm trying to be as environmentally friendly as I can. But there are other vehicles that are smaller than my four-cylinder vehicle that don't cost as much for registration. And I sit there sometimes and I ask myself the question, why? Why should I be paying more? Because the time it takes to process my vehicle registration is going to be the same as it takes to process that little smart car that's being driven around.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, Municipal
Well, I
Relations.
think, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that there are probably two things about service fees and the price of licensing a vehicle. I guess the first thing is the time, or what it would administratively cost the staff to process it. So indeed that is reviewed regularly. Now I'm looking to my colleague from Transportation and Public Works, but I know one of the reasons that there are differences in the fees for different sizes of vehicles is the heavier the vehicle in general, the greater the wear and tear on the highway system. So the greater the wear and tear, then there is a premium paid. They try to make an assessment. Obviously, the smallest car, lightest car should make, that should be the, basically the, have the, well, it would be the cheapest to license, and the heaviest and the biggest vehicle would have a, because of the amount of wear and tear that they put on the roads, they would have a much higher fee. And indeed, for some of these very heavy trucks, and there are people in the legislature who know more about those than I do, because you and your colleagues stand up and say these roads are torn up. Well, one of the reasons they're often torn up because they're not built to the standard of some of the traffic that's moving on them, and we have weight restrictions and things like that. So that's the reason. The two things: one is the actual time it takes to process it, and secondly is basically the amount of wear and tear that somebody says a particular vehicle would put on the road.
The Honourable, the member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can understand the weight restriction, and I don't want to go down that road. Again, no pun intended. I can understand the varying prices when it comes to weight and axles and that type of thing. But what confuses me is that what I don't understand is when I hear something about time, that one has to factor into consideration the time it takes to register a vehicle. And my opinion is that a vehicle is a vehicle is a vehicle is a vehicle, whether it be a four-cylinder vehicle or whether it be a six-cylinder vehicle. It shouldn't take any more time to process the registration, regardless of what the size of the vehicle is. I mean, I would think that if it takes 5 minutes for one, I would think it would take 5 minutes for all vehicles. If it takes a half an hour, the only time I think it would take some time if there was some type of glitch, if there was something wrong with the registration, a name misspelled, or some type of technical glitch. So. The argument of time, I don't completely understand that one. So.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was saying was that probably in the determination of the fee for a vehicle license, there would be the two parts. One is the administrative cost to generate the license, and to be quite frank, I agree with the honourable member. I think probably the administrative cost for registering a big truck or registering a motorcycle is probably about the same thing. So in terms of that particular fee, it's probably the same. So really where the variation comes is in sort of that road use, the levy for road use.
Honourable member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to I guess offer a wee bit of apology because I I know I'm going to be jumping all over the place, and I just want to revisit something. And I started off, I guess, when we were talking about user fees, and I'm going to ask the question again about the around user fees and the assessment process, and if there is one in place. And during that assessment process, if one considers the fairness of user fees, if that's taken into consideration when the assessment is made, if indeed there is an assessment.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, the assessment service is self-financing. So it's financed by the municipalities. And the amount that a municipality would pay to the assessment agency would be prorated based on the amount of the assessment? Based on the assessment, the total assessment, and the number of houses. So I guess if there is a fee, and undoubtedly in municipalities in their budgeting process, they have to pay a certain amount to the assessment agency every year because they do provide the financing for it. So I guess if there is a fee, it would be sort of a line item in a municipal budget, whether it is said fee for assessment agency or whatever it is, and I guess you could call that a fee. But I am not aware of the individual property owner being levied a direct fee. If there is a fee, it would be really an indirect fee.
I'm a member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to now go back, and I guess when I offered the apology before, I knew I was going to come back to this. I just had to get some information. I want to revisit the cap, the assessment cap, and we have in the province of Nova Scotia, we have an act, and it's called the Land Holdings Disclosure Act, and I guess when we say about people have to apply for the cap, once you apply for it, you don't have to reapply for it, then it does become automatic. And my question was that, well, why wouldn't we make it automatic for everybody that's eligible? And you explained the reason why. So with the Land Holding Disclosure Act, if we being the province of Nova Scotia, enforce that act, then we, the province of Nova Scotia, would know who's eligible and who's not eligible for the cap.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
The honourable member is correct, and what he's speaking of is that when somebody buys a house, they have to register it. Now, I guess two things with that is that we are moving towards that, but obviously there would be technological changes that would be needed. Quite frank, we aren't there yet. We will be someday, but we're not there yet. But the other thing is, if you look at the cost effectiveness, the paper to apply for an assessment cap, I applied for an assessment cap a couple years ago on a property, and I want to tell you, it was pretty painless. It was pretty painless. And it may be quite frank, just that the process, and as you understand, is going to become automatic, it may be more cost effective to continue what we are doing now than the necessary investment in the technology to make the change which you are suggesting. Although department is moving in that way, it would be probably a very expensive technology shift for us, and we are upgrading in the department. Is really going technological renovation there now, So I know that the deputy has informed me that is something that's being looked at, and we'll assess it. But you know, the issue of applying for that cap is not a big deal. It's not a real hardship, having gone through it. You know.
The honourable member for Waverley, Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to pursue this just for another minute or so. And I, with all due respect, I know that it was not, and I hear you and I believe you, that it was not a hardship for you, Mr. Minister. There are many people, many residents of Nova Scotia that when it comes to applying for things, just simply don't apply for multiple reasons. Maybe it could be, maybe they're not aware of it. They maybe get frustrated with the process. There could be many reasons. I know that there are a number of times that it's like I go to the grocery store, and I often get these rebate cards that if I send it in, I'll get back 10 cents off, or $1 off, or $10 off. I never send them in, and I'm sure there are many Nova Scotians out there that are like me that just will not bother to sit down and even though they're eligible for that rebate on that that grocery item, they just will not send it in. When you talk about the technology being expensive, when we talk about that you're heading towards something when it comes to the making this automatic, and I'm not sure if I understood if you were talking about making the cap automatic or the enforcement of the Lands Holdings Act. If you could just clarify that for me, then that would be helpful.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
As I understand it, Mr. Chair, the honourable member had asked the question why we did not use this Land Registration Act to find out where people lived. And I said that technologically we weren't set up to do that at this particular time. The department is looking at it. But then I said, you know, the process of applying for a cap, excuse me, is not really, having gone through it, whoever designed that form made a very user-friendly form, and I don't know who it was, but if one does not send it in, it's not because it is a complicated form, I can tell you that. It's very, very user-friendly. The other part of the question is that we're looking at it, but it may be in light of the fact that we are basically moving to an automatic cap, you know, of the CPI. But we have to determine, Nova Scotia resident, it may be more cost-effective at this particular time to continue the process of the paper application than to move to the technological. It may not be cost-effective to do that. And, you know, I guess the honourable member talked about people who don't fill in, don't bother to get rebates, and I suppose that many of us in this House would fall into that category. There are, you know, a lot of advantages. You know, I know people that, I remember a job I had one time, I used to fill out income tax forms for people. And people come in with 5 years worth of forms, and you know, they'd be able to get back, and I see the honourable member from Dartmouth South there nodding her head, she's done it too, is that they just don't bother to do it. And if somebody does it for them, but now an income tax form is a little bit more complicated, I tell you, than that cap assessment form. It's just, it's human nature there. And you know, one of the reasons that the government went to your energy rebate program and doing that as source was that the take up on the Keep the Heat program, it was very low. It was very, very low. So we did go to that automatic one there. And people said, well, you know, you put a program in, it wasn't as good. Well, the program was a lot better because those people that you're talking about that didn't apply for it got the rebate, so they got, you know, they didn't get anything the year before, and this year they did pretty well on it. But, you know, that's one of the reasons we made that shift.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I heard cost effective now, is it the reason that it may be considered as more cost effective, is that got anything to do with the number of people that are applying for the cap? I mean, if the number is low, then the amount of money that's being not collected would be low as well.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the cap. First of all, we have to talk about people that are, for whom the cap is a good thing. There are an awful lot of properties in Nova Scotia, more properties in Nova Scotia, for which the cap is immaterial. Okay, in other words, that they're, this program wasn't put in place to benefit all Nova Scotians. This program was put in place really to benefit a few select areas of the province, to try and protect people who, in some cases, were being forced out of their homes that they'd had for family homes for years and years and years, and simply because where that house was located, the taxes went up. The property was just the property and the location. It had nothing to do with the value of the home itself. So that's why that was put in. So the terms of being cost effective, it may be, given that just as cost effective for the department, to do this. I have some sympathy for people that will not take advantage of programs, good programs for them. But, sometimes you have to draw the line at the amount of sympathy you extend. I mean, we all in our lives have done things or not done things we should have done and regretted it later. But I'm not sure that we have to blame the government for that.
The Honourable the member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I've been timing myself here, and I'm getting close to my end, and I mean that in more ways than one. I want the chair to know that there will be a number of us that were speaking to the minister and putting questions forward, and I do know that the member from the Liberals will be speaking for a wee while this morning, and will probably adjourn and continuing tomorrow. So at this point in time, I'd like to take my seat, and I'm going to turn things over to my colleague from Dartmouth, Portland Valley.
Honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually only have two issues I want to ask the minister about. And the first one is the status of 211. As he is aware, I'm the NDP critic for the voluntary sector, and the headquarters for United Way of Halifax region are in my constituency, and so I've been following quite closely the evolution of 211 in the province. And as the minister understands, it's a telephone number that would provide centralized access to a full range of non-emergency information about social health and government services. And it basically is sort of value added to a lot of what government does, a lot of what the voluntary sector does, and it provides a way for people to get information when they need it on their own time. And it ensures that there's a live person at the end of the phone. So I'm just wondering if he can give me an update on the status of the 211 program. Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, and I don't doubt what the honourable member from Dartmouth South Portland Valley would know is that the group with whom she is speaking, very familiar with it, came in about some period of time ago and made a presentation to government and indeed probably to all three caucuses. So there is a group out there that's trying to get this going. They have made a presentation to government. It has been on the government's radar screen, but to be quite frank, this year it didn't make the cut. There is a cost to government in providing this service. This year, government, quite frank, is, I guess, to quote my friend the finance minister, this was a really very, very difficult budget year. The items that we included in the budget this year were those which we felt we prioritized those things, and that one didn't make it to the top of the list. Having said that, the government will be considering the 211 issue again in the very near future. I forget what the cost was going to be. It was not a cost. I guess it was a feeling of government that there were other priorities that suited the needs of more Nova Scotians were more important at that time. That does not mean that it is not a worthwhile program and that the government will not consider supporting it in the future if the resources become available.
Honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not even sure my information is up to date. I know there were two sort of beginning phases of 211. I think there was a feasibility study somewhere in the area of $90,000. I'm not sure if that was even started, but there was also sort of a developmental stage, initial stage, where the factual information would be collected from all the various help and support lines around the province, and sort of building the database before the 211 line actually started. Does anyone know if either of those stages has even started, or where are we just in that very beginning stage?
The Honourable, the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, we have done the consultant phase, and quite frank, consultant's report was positive. If we can find resources in our budget this year, we will begin to begin that data collection. On the other hand, we don't have, as you saw, we don't have a line for that now, so it will depend if the resources do become available. So, as I said, it is an item that is going to be discussed in the near future by government. So, other than that, I can't give you any more information at this time.
Order, please. The time for the NDP caucus has expired. We now recognize in the Liberal caucus the Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is quite a wide-ranging department the minister has here, and I'm going to start with some of the things that I've been hearing lately, and I'm going to start with the motor vehicle inspection. The new motor vehicle inspection regulations, I can understand why they've been put in place for safety, people's safety, and the safety of other people on the roads. But this new system opens up the possibility of major rip-offs by auto repair places, and of course, over the last probably 50 years, there's been always disreputable people out there, and I think they're in the minority, not the majority. And I'm going to give you an example, a couple of examples that happened to me, and fortunately I didn't fall for them, but I was into a local well-known establishment, which I won't name here, but I can tell you afterwards if you'd like to know. And I had a truck at the time, a small truck, and it wasn't heavy enough truck, so I took small little shocks, or this tiny little shocks around the thing, and I put shocks on it out of a 1-ton truck because they would fit. And it made the truck a little bit solider and everything, so I had them put on, their lifetime guarantee on them. So 3 months later, went back to the same establishment, and had to get a new tire. So the guy come out and big smile on his face, "You need new shocks." I said, "Boys, I didn't realize my shocks were gone. I'll be back next week." So the next week I went back and I said, "I'm here to get my shocks replaced. Here's my warranty for my new shocks I bought 3 months ago." And he put the truck up on hoist. "Oh, those don't need to be replaced." The same guy that told me 3 months earlier that they had to be replaced. I took a truck I had in to a dealership, a Ford dealership actually, and I've always driven Fords for whatever reason. I've always driven them, and for a lineup. So I go in for the lineup, and the guy comes out after about half an hour and said, "I got some bad news for you." He said, "You need a whole new front end in your truck. You need new upper and lower ball joints. You need new tie rod ends, $1,000 bill." So I said, "Well, you better show me before you spend this." This truck with just off warranty, 70, 80,000 kilometers on it. And so I go out and look at the truck, and there was one tie rod end gone. There's no question about that, but maybe nothing else. So I said, "No, put it down off the hoist. I'm not going to get it fixed here for $1,000. So I went to a local garage that I trust very much, and I could leave with my vehicle, and they would not charge extra. And I told them what had happened. I said, "You know, the upper and lower ball joints are gone. The tie rod ends are all gone. I need a whole new front end." That's what they told me, but I said, "I want you to check it." So he checked it over, and there's 2 different ways to check a front end under the manual that the department has for the front end. He said one tie rod's end is gone, and that was accurate because it was gone. It was obvious. But he said nothing else. Absolutely nothing else gone. So anyway, he said, "Go get the tie rod end." So I went, picked it up. He assembled it, put it back on, and then I had to take it to a lineup. Needless to say, I didn't take it back to the dealer I had it from. I took it off to a tire place in the city that does alignments and does very good work. Asked them the same question. Check my front end over. Make sure there's nothing wrong with that front end. Checked out all of it. Absolutely nothing. And until the day I traded the truck in, not a problem with the truck. Now, both of those places were not just backyard. These guys weren't backyard mechanics. These were established, well-recognized, and well-used operations, both times. Neither time I fell for it, because I knew better, but someone that would have brought it in, my wife would have taken the truck in, had a $1,000 repair bill. And you know what the repair bill in that truck was? Excluding the alignment, $79. $79. So what protection do you have for consumers? This law, I understand why it's there, but what can happen is they can go in and they can say your brakes are all gone. Put all new brakes on for someone that doesn't know what to look for. Put all new brakes in your vehicle $500, $600 later, and maybe your brakes weren't gone. Maybe they would have been fine till the next year. How are you going to police that? How are you going to stop it? And what penalties do you have in place for the people that are unscrupulous and do these sort of things to people?
The Honourable, the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Well, let me say I agree with the honourable member that the great majority of the people who provide service to Nova Scotians, whether it's in the automobile service or to the food service, whatever it is, are good, reputable, and honest people, and that's one of the things that makes Nova Scotia such a great place to live. On the other hand, I do know that there are rascals out there as well, and I guess we've all experienced that at one time or another. I don't know, particularly in light of the example which the honourable member used with the front end of his car, whether the new set of motor vehicle regulations would have, well, I guess it was under the old set, maybe you were talking, it seems to me front end, that had to be checked anyway, even under the old regulations, so they were unscrupulous then, they could be unscrupulous now. All I can tell you is that if there are complaints levied against a service station, we will check those things out, and if we find that there is some validation to them, then the license for inspection would be suspended, and I think there's and there are fines for doing that. I know one of the things, particularly in the automotive industry, that I can remember this coming up a number of years ago, and perhaps it was when Ralph Nader was running around with the lemons and whatnot, is that most of the dealers now, or a lot of the dealers, if they change something for you, they will give you back what they have replaced in a plastic bag. Now, of course, you can say, well, they just, it's put an old part in. But, I think by and large, we have shysters in any line of business, but the people with whom I'm familiar, the ones with whom I deal with in my home community, I feel I have every confidence when I go to them that I'm going to get good value for the services they deliver.
Honourable member for Preston.
And I'm certain that you do, because you know the people and they're very reputable people, and I can say the same thing about the people I deal with. But it's unfortunate if you go in and it seems that these operations seem to prey on women worse than they do on men. I don't know why, because some women know more about cars than men do, quite frankly. But it seems to happen. I mean, it does seem to happen. And the thing that worries me is, and there's going to be some major backlash from this as time goes on. And if someone goes to get their car inspected and they can't drive it away and they can't take it away and it's going to be towed to do something and it's going to be a huge bill to get it, you're going to see a major backlash from this. I've had many, many calls on it already, and it leaves too much to the discretion of the local mechanic that's looking at this. And if you don't have some serious penalties for these people when you do catch them, and it's difficult to catch them, because you get the parts, you say the part's in a plastic bag, but whose car are they off of? I mean, it's all easy to get a bunch of scrap parts. I mean, they're real easy to find. So it could be off anyone's car of the same model as your car, so there's no way you could prove that they were yours or not. So there's no real way to do that, and not allowed in the service bays anymore for safety reasons, and that, you know, and I can understand that as well. But as you go through this process, there's going to be some people get ripped off, and ripped off seriously. We're not talking now of repair bills of a couple of $100s. Some of these things are in the thousands to repair. And if they're not done, you know, if they don't need to be done, they should not be done. So it's going to be a serious, serious situation. And I don't know what your fines are. Could you tell me what the fines are for someone that rips someone off and you can actually prove?
The Honourable, the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the honourable member from Preston, we would have to get that information for you. We'll do that.
Honourable Member for Preston.
I'd appreciate that. I think that'd be quite helpful. The next thing we're going to talk about is a problem that I've encountered in my areas. When you remove rent controls, and there's all kinds of arguments, both sides of rent controls. I have a mobile home park in my area that has, I think, 10 or 12 different rates of rent for the same size property. And the reason that the landlord has done that, I believe, is because each group has to make an appeal when a rent increase comes. So if you're going to put a $10 or $20 across-the-board increase for everybody in the park, they have to do 10 or 12 separate appeals to appeal it. And if they don't appeal it, and someone slips and don't appeal, which has happened, they get the maximum rent increase usually. This is a hole in the system. I think it's being used by the owner of the mobile home park, and I think that's something that should be fixed. Was the minister aware of this?
The Honourable, the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, I have not, during the, I guess it's 8 months that I've been minister, had any complaint about that. So, no, I was not aware of it.
The Honourable Member for Preston.
It's something I would suggest that the minister might, when he has time, to check into it. I must say I've been working with your director for the residential tenancy, and been an excellent person to deal with, up front, all the information. I mean, it's just been really good, really informative, and very, very helpful. But of course, your staff can't do anything if the regulations say that they can't. So they're doing the things that they're that they have to do under the law, and I respect them for doing that. And I can't say enough good about the people you've been working with in your department. And I'd ask you to pass that along if you get an opportunity. The other thing that's been changed a while ago is on the other side of it, if a landlord has a tenant that's not paying the rent, so they go through the process to go to residential tenancy, they go in and they make the application, win the case, and they go through the process to evict the tenant. The tenant then goes to the small claims court, and that holds it up again. In the meantime, the landlord's not getting paid the rent the whole time. And then nobody knows what's going to come out of this. There's no consistency in the small claims court. Absolutely no consistency. There's no consistency with past cases in this matter. There's no consistency with anything that goes on there. It's because it's the opinion of the adjudicator at that time, which may not have ever seen one of these cases before. So it's hard to say, and it depends on what people can have. And basically, a landlord can be out of rent maybe close to a year while this whole process is going on. And by the time this is all done, usually the people that aren't paying the rent have no assets and have no ability to pay anyway. So by the time this is all over, then the landlord has lost the money. Now, the landlord could probably afford to lose the money, but the problem is the other tenants in the mobile home park in particular end up paying this lost rent, because the landlord doesn't want to lose it. When he puts his statement together to do a rent increase, bang, the rent goes up for everybody to pay for this person that's not paying their rent. Were you aware of that situation?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, Municipal Relations.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've heard of that one, and indeed, I guess all of us as MLAs have been visited by landlords who have been in that. As a matter of fact, there was a situation, actually it was in another province, that somebody drew to my attention that led me to go to the department and say, look, is that the case in Nova Scotia? And if it is there something that we can do about it? Anyway, yes, we are aware of it, and indeed it is being reviewed to see if there is something that we might, some protections that perhaps are feasible to effect for the landlords. And on the other hand, of course, the advocates for the tenants, we're looking at both sides of the issue.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
The real issue is here we need protection on both sides, in reality. Yeah, but the problem is when your staff, a very good staff and as a residential tenancy, review officers review these cases and they make a decision on the process and then it's laid down following all the rules, because I've never heard of a case in my whole time as an MLA or when I was minister of the department of anyone complaining about the adjudicators in these cases. They might complain, well, I didn't get a fair deal, but when you really check into it, they did get a fair deal, and probably better than a fair deal from the adjudicators you have that work within the department on this. So basically, you have a dual standard now. You have in one case, your adjudicators there, they're very experienced doing this and know all the rules and all the tricks and seen everything under the sun that anyone could give to them, both from landlords and from tenants, because there's some people on both sides of that case always that want to get an advantage one way or the other. And then when they make a ruling and it goes to small claims court and it's overruled and it doesn't meet the criteria that they're under, how can you expect the staff to really do the job that they're well trained and well prepared to do, and they've made a decision in following the rules? How do you expect them to rule the next time, knowing that could very well happen to their ruling?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
The honourable member draws up another issue that comes from many years' experience as MLA, and of course I extend in the department as the minister, and that is also one of the things that we are looking at the present time.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
Any idea when you might have that resolved?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Chair, we would hope to put that matter to rest one way or the other in the fall, or by the fall, I should say.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
Well, that would be positive, and any change I think would be an improvement at this point, because I haven't talked directly to any of your people that work in the department, but I've talked to people that have gone through the system and then talked to the adjudicator afterwards, and they're pretty upset about it because they're doing their job, they're doing it right. They're following every rule that there is to follow, been fair on both sides of the issue, and it goes small claims court and the ruling is overturned. And if I was in their shoes, I'd be very discouraged, as would be the individual that went through the process properly and then found themselves on the other end of the stick. I want to ask a couple of other questions. One other question. Did you realize, I know the present government eliminated rent controls in mobile home parks. Did you do a review to see what the rents have done since then?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
I guess the short answer to that is no, Mr. Chair. But again, it's one of those items that there is a form of control which is based on complaint, but it's not the type of control that the honourable member is referring to. It is, again, not an issue that has been drawn to my attention in the short period of time that I've been minister. Now, there was a mobile home advisory committee which provided some recommendations to government, and I'm working from memory, but I don't think that was part of their recommendation. I can't remember. Anyway.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
Bring the minister up and a little bit up to speed here with what people are living with out there and are contending with in one park in my riding. And it's not all the parks. It just depends on who owns it and who the tenants are. But in one park, we have rents from just slightly over $100 a month. All the lots are exactly the same size, all the same services, and the new rents now are up to $275 a month. So the rents are all over the place for exactly the same services. So something has to be done to level this out, because what's going to happen is in this one particular mobile home park, it's going to put people out of there. They get nowhere to go with these when you move a mobile home, especially someone who's been there for 30 years or so. There's nowhere to go. You can't move into another park because they want to sell you a new mobile, and it's pretty well all tied up. And so that's an issue I think that the minister should be aware of, and I can give you all the documentation on that, and I will forward that to your office in the next while. I've got a couple of more questions here on the infrastructure agreement, the Canada-Nova Scotia Municipal Rural Infrastructure Fund. And I want to know, first of all, what's the duration of the agreement?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
The current MRF, Mr. Chair, we have 5 years left on it.
The Honourable the Member for Preston.
This is an answer you probably won't have, but if you don't have it today, just indicate that and you can forward the information. I would appreciate it. How is the funding divided across the province now, and what kind of structure do you have to review the different applications to see if it's equally distributed across all parts of Nova Scotia? Is there a formula for doing that, or is there a process for doing that? And the funding that's been spent so far, I'd like a detailed report of where that is by community.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Yeah, the allocations for that, Mr. Chair, are primarily on 2 counties based on population, with some recognition of the employment rate or the unemployment rate in the county. The projects, certainly there's no problem to get you a list of the projects that have been funded up to this point. There is I guess what happens is that the counties submit a list of priority items, and there is a review committee that takes a look at those. And you know, sometimes there are it's not as straightforward as it seems, because you get 3 number 1 priorities, and or if you have smaller units within a bigger municipal unit. For example, one of the things that happens is that if you have villages in a county municipal structure, and I know that sometimes the county would ask the villages not to submit their own application, but because it detracts from, you know, the pool of money. But if the village does submit the application in my constituency last year, the village of Bible Hill had an MRIF project funded, which had to do with extending, replacing an ancient sewer line which needed to be done. So that was a portion of the money that went to the county, or would have been allocated to the county, I guess.
Thank you. The Honourable the Member for Preston.
I've got two more questions on that topic, and if you don't have the information, Dave, you can forward it to us, it'll be fine. How much money has been spent so far in the agreement, and how much money is there to be left to be spent?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
I can tell you that it's been a lot of money, but I can't tell you the exact amount. We will provide that information for you, of course, but the other thing is that despite the fact that the agreement has another 5 years to run, all of the projects have been submitted, and so additional applications are not being considered at this time.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you very much. Next thing we're going to talk about something that's probably dear to the minister's heart. Gas prices in Nova Scotia and regulation. You must hear a lot about this. Does the department keep a cost comparison between Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland on a daily basis or a weekly basis on the differential in pricing?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
I guess there would be both a yes and a no response to that, Mr. Chair. First of all, the staff in the department clearly on a daily basis or whatever keep track of the prices in New Brunswick and Newfoundland and in Prince Edward Island. Are they looking at the differences? No, they're more looking at the price rather than the differences in the prices.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Did anyone, or the minister or anyone in his department look at the difference in cost? Let's just use New Brunswick and Nova Scotia for an example. What it costs an average family and the price differential we've been seeing between the two provinces?
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Not really, and I think in that line of questioning, and I understand it because that's one of the things that we do get in our department all the time, is that gas is cheaper. Why can't you sell gas the same price you can in Ontario? Or why don't you sell gas the same price you do in New Brunswick? But I think the New Brunswick government chose during the election campaign last year to take, how much, 3.5, 4.5 cents? About 4 cents off their highway tax, excise tax on the price of a gallon of fuel. And then once you added in the HST, it'd be more than that. That was a pretty expensive thing for them to do. Quite frank, we were asked here in Nova Scotia why we didn't do that. And quite frank, we couldn't afford it. But if you take a look at the New Brunswick budget that was introduced this spring, and compare it to the budget which Nova Scotia introduced it, you will find that there were significant increases in taxation in other areas where there wasn't here in Nova Scotia. So it's, you rob Peter to pay Paul.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
The unfortunate thing with that type of a transaction is that sometimes the people that need it the most, or people that affect the most, that maybe have to travel further because they can't live in the expensive taxes here in the city, or in the rural areas, anywhere in HRM, they have to travel a long ways to work. And they don't necessarily get the benefit on the other end of the projects that the government's going to do. So when you look at that and you look at an average family, and I did a rough calculation, and the differential there one time, and I don't know what it is today, but I think it's very high today, was around 11 cents. Sure doesn't account for the 4 cents difference in taxes. And if you did even a 9 cent differential over a year, you're looking at something like $265 a year for liters a week of gas, which is not very much today. And if you look at that and compare that with a business that maybe have 3 or 4 service trucks, or a trucking company or something else, or some other company that runs gasoline, and compare it with what a similar company in New Brunswick does, their costs are a lot higher just for fuel. And if you get their costs higher, they're less competitive, especially if they're exporting out of the province. And it's going to hurt our economy long term. And when it hurts economy, everything hurts. I mean, the people don't make as much money because the companies can't pay as much money. So it's just a vicious cycle. It's an absolutely vicious cycle. And the longer we keep gas the way it's been shown to be more expensive in Nova Scotia than it has been in New Brunswick, regardless of the tax. It's even without the tax, seldom it's very close with the tax. And it's even the administration of this is so expensive. So when you go through the administration costs, we get that as well. And I know we've heard the Premier stand up in this House and indicate that we wanted to save the local distant service stations in the rural areas, but at the expense of what? I don't want to see those close either, and I don't want to see ever any business close. But there's got to be some structure in place that we can ensure that Nova Scotians get the best possible price for fuel, and at the same time we can have the small businesses survive in the rural areas because they're needed in the rural areas. So I think that the department should start doing a comparison and just see what it does and see what kind of negative effect this is having on our economy. I mean, this will kill our economy over time. It takes time. I ran a business for a long time, and you get an increase of 2 or 3% on something. It doesn't sound like much, but you start adding that to your bottom line, and something else rises 1%, something else 0.5%. All of a sudden, the bottom line was very healthy. It's not healthy anymore. And it takes a long time for that to really hit the bottom line. It may be a year, maybe 2 years, but when it comes, it's too late. You can't make enough corrections anymore. You can only cut so much, and there's only so much efficiency you can get. And when it gets to a certain point, you either got to put your prices up, you got to lay people off, or you've got to cut costs other places. And is the minister aware of this? That's really, I need to know that. Is the minister aware? Is your government aware of that? And, we've got fewer jobs in Nova Scotia today, fewer people working than we've ever had in the recent history. And that's proof. Though that's true, we got fewer people actually in the workforce today. According to the labor briefs that come out in this province, that's what they're saying. We got lower unemployment because there's fewer people looking for work. The unemployment numbers people don't understand are just the number of people looking for work. A lot of people gave up, or they've got fewer people working. So it's starting to have a negative effect already in our economy.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
The last comments the honourable member made, I guess I'd have to see the statistics, because certainly the information that we've had is that there are more people working in Nova Scotia than at any other time in Nova Scotia's history. So clearly he's presenting a different story than clearly one that the information that I have would support. I guess the honourable member knows too is that governments review their policies from time to time, and having been the Minister in Service Nova Scotia, whatever it was his iteration was when he was there, whatever its name was, that he would understand that our role really in gas regulation is to deliver it, the regulated system. The actual policy of whether it is a good thing or not it's a government policy. One of the things that I think the honourable member, I assume that he is saying, though he hasn't been directly said it, was that is that if we weren't in a regulated system, that gas would be 8 or 9 cents cheaper. Now, I can tell you that that's not the case in Nova Scotia, because one of the things that the Gardner-Penfold report did, which I looked at, which is not made public, and I won't talk about the detail on it, but certainly his findings were not that. That in terms of price differential, 8 or 9 cents a liter, that's just simply not the case. The other thing is that when we take a look at the New Brunswick market, as a matter of fact, this is a question that every 2 weeks, just about, I sit down and I ask staff. And because we make the determination every second Friday or every second Thursday what the price is going to be on that Friday, whether it's going to go up, down, or remain the same. And clearly, when we have that discussion, the issue of how much the price in New Brunswick or in particularly New Brunswick and PEI does come up, I have those figures. Newfoundland, we get that as well, although that's sort of a different thing. But when you are looking at the New Brunswick prices, one of the things that people look at, I guess, is maybe what the price is in Olac or it is in Moncton. But I'm not sure they're looking what the price is in these smaller communities where it is at least that in Nova Scotia or likely higher. We sometimes, it's like comparing the price of gas in downtown Toronto with the price of gas perhaps in Dryden. So not necessarily the same thing. Just let one other comment sitting down is that some of the information that we've had, Mr. Chair, is that this past year that there are figures that indicate that the price of gas in Nova Scotia was closer to the average price in Canada than it had been for some time. And indeed, there was I think the Retail Gasoline Dealers Association has made this information, you probably looked at it, public, is that there were a number of period of time where the price of gas in Nova Scotia was below the average price of gas in Canada.
Thank you. The honourable member has approximately 3 minutes left. The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you. The real issue is here regulation. I didn't bring it up before, but that's really the issue. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. And everyone knows, and we've been tracking very closely, the actual prices between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, because New Brunswick is our closest competitor when it comes to business. It's the closest we have to compare with what families are going to pay for. And when you look at that, New Brunswick has been consistently lower in price, and sometimes as high as 11 cents a liter. 11 cents a liter runs to about 50 cents a gallon. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And when you look at that whole process, and that does have a negative effect on our economy. And over the long term, it takes a long time, but it has a negative effect. And the regulation, I don't think works properly. I don't think it works. I think it's costing Nova Scotians more than it's cost without regulation. And we see ups and downs in the regulations. We've seen ups and downs before, but recently we've only seen a whole bunch of ups and very few downs. And watch the crude oil price, and the crude oil prices are going down. So when you look at the whole picture of it, it doesn't seem to make sense in Nova Scotia with the price we're paying for fuel. And as we see this and businesses start to realize that, when they're burning several thousand liters a week or a month, it's huge impact on their bottom line, huge impact. And that all comes back to the consumer. And after the consumer can only pay so much. And when it comes to the point in the day that they can't afford to pay it anymore, what do? If someone is living that they have to commute back and forth to work, and they find they can't afford to travel back and forth to work with the income they have, they're in trouble. They just simply do not have an alternative. They can't sell their home and move to the city where it's more expensive to buy a home because they don't have enough equity. So what do? Can't quit their job. They're stuck. They're stuck. And I think there's a lot of families in that situation, a lot more families are going to get in that situation. Even 2 or 3 cents a liter makes a big difference. Even as we go to more fuel-efficient vehicles, which is what we should be doing, it's still going to hurt the average Nova Scotian, and it's going to be hurt to the point that that they're probably going to have to sell their homes and move in apartments. I've seen that with the taxes have gone up. So when you tie that into the fuel and to all the other costs, Nova Scotians are going to hurt, and they're going to hurt for a long time. And the hurting has to stop. If it doesn't stop...
Order, please. Order, please. The time allotted for debate in Committee on Supply has now expired. So far in committee, we have completed 39 hours and 34 minutes. So we have approximately 26 minutes left for tomorrow. The Chair will now recognize the Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee do now rise and report progress and beg leave to sit again on a future day.
The chairman reports.
Committee has made some progress and begs leave to sit again.
Order, please. Order, please. I've come back with a Speaker's ruling to a point of order that was raised earlier this afternoon by the Honourable Minister of Community Services. As was indicated at that time, I would take it under advisement and review that matter. I have done that, and as I indicated in reviewing the transcripts provided to me by Hansard this afternoon, would also reiterate that we do take all members in this chamber at their word. And that is a hallowed tradition in this House, that one that is upheld. In fact, it's incumbent upon the Speaker to ensure that right and privilege is upheld. There was the circumstance, however, that was raised. And the difficulty as Speaker that I encountered is in bringing up a broader range of concern with regards to a point of order, it doesn't get into the specifics of a matter. And quite frankly, to get into those specifics would in fact cause a breach of the very same concern that was raised by the Minister. And I would say that at that point, one has to look at where is the best venue to have that concern raised. And quite frankly, it came up further by the Leader of the Liberal Party with a recommendation about trying to ensure that members are being provided with authorization to speak on behalf of themselves or someone else that they represent, i.e. a minor or someone that may be under their power of attorney or the like. It is not to try and restrict members from representing constituent concerns on the floor of this legislature, because quite frankly that is not my responsibility or duty to impugn that. However, for that reason and for the recommendations that were brought forward, I have decided that we should refer the matter because there is a need for further dialogue about procedures within the House, and it reflects directly. So I'm referring it to the Special Committee on Assembly Matters that can deal with the rules and forms of procedures of the House of Assembly, so that there can be a fulsome debate in confidence amongst those members where it can be appropriately discussed and debated and a decision come forward with regards to the best response to that to maintain the integrity of the House. I would have to note as well with this, there was a statement in closing by the Minister with regards to the statement that basically said that the personal case is on the floor for the issue of political gain. And of course, I would just note that that would also impugn the motive of members and would be unparliamentary. So I think we've determined in some forms that it is, I think, incumbent upon the Special Committee on Assembly Matters to deal with a broad range of issues that have come up as concerns of late with regards to decorum and the forms of practice within the House. And so refer to that committee that can meet and then report back when at a future date to the House. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time I ask the unanimous consent of the House to revert back to the order of business to presenting reports of committees.
There's a request to revert the order of business back to reporting reports of committees. Is agreed? The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I'm directed to report the committee has met and considered the following bills. Bill number 170, an act to amend Chapter 367 of the revised statutes 1989, the Provincial Parks Act. Bill number 189, an act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility Review Board Act. Bill number 195, an act to amend Chapter 218 of the revised statutes 1989, the Incompettent Persons Act with certain other statutes. And Bill number 197, an act to amend Chapter 244 of the revised statutes 1989, the Justice of the Peace Act. The committee recommends these bills in favourable consideration of the House without amendment.
Order these bills be brought forward to the Committee of the whole House on bills. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the Committee of the whole House on bills.
Is it agreed?
Order, please. The Committee on the whole House on bills is called to order. The Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, do we have a unanimous consent of the House to deal with these bills on the Committee of the whole House on bills?
There's been a request to deal with these bills in committee. Is it agreed? It is agreed. The Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, I call Bill number 170, an act to amend Chapter 367 of revised statutes 1989 Provincial Parks Act.
Bill number 170. No amendments. Question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, Bill number 189, an act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility Review Board Act.
Bill number 189. Are there any speakers? No speakers. Question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, Bill number 195, an act to amend Chapter 218 of the revised statutes 1989, the Incompettent Persons Act, and certain other statutes.
Bill number 195. No amendments. Question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carry. Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, Bill number 197, an act to amend Chapter 244 of the revised statutes 1989, the Justice of the Peace Act.
Bill number 197. No amendments. Question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that your committee do rise and report these bills.
Thank you.
Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on Bills reports.
Committee has met and considered 4 bills, numbered 170, 189, 195, 197. Chairman's been instructed to recommend them. Favorable consideration of the House, each without amendment.
Order that these be read for a third time on a future day. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for consent of the House to third reading on public bills.
Is it agreed? Agreed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the private members' public bills. Bill
Private members' public bills.
Bill 106, or excuse me, 170. An act to amend Chapter 367 of the Revised Statutes, 1989, Parks Act.
Bill number 170. The Honourable Member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you. I'll make a few comments in support of this bill. It's a bill that has been well received in the community that I represent. I was at an annual general meeting of the Trails Association last night. People must be paying attention to this legislature because they are aware of the fact that the Lewis Lake Park, the Lewis Lake Provincial Park, is going to bring recognition to a previous MLA, Jerry Lawrence. I want to notice that Jerry Lawrence was a Buchanan cabinet minister who always got back to his constituents in spite of his politics. He was a radio broadcaster, and we all know how successful radio broadcasters become as MLAs. I think our friend from Glace Bay, of course, aspires to things well beyond his reach at this stage, but someday perhaps. I'm not saying he's going to have a park named after him. Maybe a junior high someday. But finally, Mr. Speaker, Jerry Lawrence was the MLA for Halifax St. Margaret's for a number of years. Jerry Lawrence was a gentleman who put a great effort into Lewis Lake Park, making it accessible to all Nova Scotians. It's a wonderful place to come and visit. And when the opportunity is, you're in our community and you'd like to go to Lewis Lake Park, or as we're hopefully going to have it here in a few minutes, Jerry Lawrence Park, I welcome you to our community. Thank you for your time, and I move third reading.
Question's been called. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 170, title and act to amend Chapter 367 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Provincial Parks Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, public bills for third reading.
Public bills for third reading. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Bill number 189, an act to amend Chapter 2 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility Review Board Act.
Bill 189. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I move third reading of Bill number 189.
Question's been called. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
89, title and act to amend Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1992, the Utility and Review Board Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Bill number 195, an act to amend Chapter 218 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Incompetent Persons Act, and certain other statutes.
Bill number 195. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Speaker, I move third reading of Bill number 195.
Motion is for third reading. Question's been called. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
195, title and act to amend Chapter 218 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Incompetent Persons Act, and certain other statutes.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Bill number 197, an act to amend Chapter 244 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Justice of the Peace Act.
Bill number 197. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, move third reading of Bill number 197.
Third reading. Question's been called. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 197, title and act to amend Chapter 244 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Justices of the Peace Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, that concludes the government's business for today. I move the House be adjourned to sit again tomorrow at 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Daily routine. Budget. Public bills for third reading. Committee of the whole House on supply. And Mr. Speaker, there will be a recess following that. After the daily routine, the supply, and so on, for the Lieutenant Governor to visit the historic chambers.
Okay, the motion is for the House now rise and meet tomorrow at the hour of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Count by nay. Motion is carried.